Welcome to Gathering Grace. Gathering Grace is a presentation of the women of the ELCA at Grace Lutheran Church in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Shelley Clay, our musician, just played the beautiful hymn, Christ Be Our Light. And that is our theme for today, in these days just before Christmas, the light of the world. The words to the first verse of that hymn are, longing for light, we wait in darkness. Longing for truth, we turn to you. Make us your own, your holy people, light for the world to see. Christ, be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through the darkness. Christ, be our light, shine in your church, gathered today. About 6 months ago, Shelley and I and Vicki Marthaler conceived the idea of Gathering Grace as a place where women could gather and tell stories about their faith, of the light that Christ brought into their lives. We wanted to encourage people, especially who were feeling isolated during the pandemic, and we knew that we had in the congregation of Grace Lutheran Church a large number of encouraging women who could help model a way of hope for all of us. We were not certain how this was going to work out. Would anybody be willing to share? Would it feel safe to tell stories that might be painful, might induce tears, might be misunderstood? And would anyone want to listen to these stories? Would our faith sharers be affirmed with the acceptance that the light in each one of us so deserves? We knew that our efforts would need the support of prayers, of trust, and of the gift of hope that comes from the Holy Spirit. Shelley offered, with her strong abiding faith, to share the first story. And we even gathered around to practice with her. I don't think we ever did that again. After the glow of Shelley's story, other stories began to flow. We were amazed by the courage, the honesty, the humility of our storytellers. There was pain, the remembrance of the death of beloved children, of husbands, of parents. There was the agony of failed marriages, of children alienated, cancer, alcoholism, abuse, depression. All the darkness of the broken world came out of these stories of faith. Early on, though, one woman spoke to us about lanterns. Lanterns, she said, were people and events that God sent to shape her. Because of her wonderful description, we were able to look for and discovered lanterns in each of the stories told by each woman. I remember some of them: a brother-in-law, a chaplain, a music teacher, parents, teachers, doctors, and especially grandchildren have been lanterns to the women who told these stories. In hearing about the lanterns that appeared in each person's life, we were able to see the power of God in each person's life. We are so grateful to reflect on these lanterns and see them in the light of St. John's Christmas Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. There was a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came to witness concerning the light, that through him all people might believe. He sounds like a lantern to me. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and all the world was made known through him. The world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in him, he gave the right to become children of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling in us. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Christ, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's from John chapter 1. The Word, which is Christ, became flesh for us on that first Christmas day and gave life to all that was created. The life, John says, brought light to everyone, a light so great that the darkness has never overcome it. And that is the light that we use to light our lanterns. We become lanterns for each other when we step out in faith and share that warm glow. Maybe at this time your lantern doesn't seem very bright. I know mine seems to flicker in the weight of illness, political division, isolation. But we are not alone. Our many separate lanterns, lit by the Christmas light, spread a circle of unending radiant fellowship around the world. We are enlightened by the almighty power of the Christmas light that the darkness will never overcome. And that has been our vision for Gathering Grace. Vicki Marthaler has a wonderful Christmas poem for you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Shelley, too, for playing. Many of you know that as Mark and I came to North Carolina, I had retired as a chaplain at a nursing home. And I have to tell you that, I suppose there was like 100 residents from time to time in our nursing home, and oftentimes the light within them was dim. And it was so important that family and friends were allowed to come and take part with activities, because when family and friends would come to visit and there was that interchange, the light became brighter. Relationships are important. And now we're in this time when it's going to be Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we are told maybe we should isolate, keep our distance, and it's hard because we know that being together is important and that it fans that flame and the light is brighter. So this year I'm encouraging you to be as creative as you can be and not forget about your aunts and uncles and grandparents and great-grandparents. Maybe it's your neighbors from afar. Remember them in cards and calls and whatever you can, because it is important. And I'm going to read to you a story. It's my favorite Christmas book. It's called A Cup of Christmas Tea. It was written by Tom Haig. And every year at the nursing home, and I was there for 20 years, every Christmas season, our administrator would have a Christmas tea where all the residents were invited to the dining room. And of course, there would be homemade cookies. We'd have families bring in homemade cookies. And she would read this story. And it spoke volumes to me about the gift of relationship and about being there for others, even when it's not easy. You know, when somebody's sick or hurt and maybe you're a little fearful about visiting. Maybe somebody has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and you're going, maybe they won't know me. I won't know what to say. Or maybe someone's had a stroke and maybe they're or Parkinson's and their talk is kind of garbled and you're not sure if you're going to understand it. Take the risk. Take the risk and continue to solidify that relationship and let them know that you're there for them. So I'm going to read to you this wonderful little book called A Cup of Christmas Tea. And I hope that it will bring someone to your mind that you need to connect with in a safe way, of course. The log was in the fireplace, all spiced and ready to burn. At last, the yearly Christmas race was in the clubhouse turn. The cards were in the mail, the gifts were beneath the tree, and 30 days reprieve till Visa could catch up with me. And though smug satisfaction seemed the order of the day, something still was nagging me and would not go away. A week before, I got a letter from my old great aunt. It read, "Of course, I'll understand completely if you can't, but if you find you have some time, how wonderful if we could have a little chat and share a cup of Christmas tea." You know, she'd had a mild stroke that year. It crippled her left side. Though housebound now, my folks had said, hadn't hurt her pride. They said, she'd love to see you. What a nice thing it would be for you to go and maybe have a cup of Christmas tea. Oh, but boy, I didn't want to go. What a bitter pill. To see an old relation and how far she'd gone downhill. I remembered her as vigorous, funny, and as bright. I remembered Christmas Eves when she regaled us half the night. Oh, I didn't want to risk all that. I didn't want the pain. I didn't need to be depressed. I didn't need the strain. And what about my brother? Why not him? She's his aunt, too. I thought I had it justified, but then before I knew the reasons not to go I so painstakingly had built were cracking wide and crumbling in an acid rain of guilt. I put on boots and gloves and cap, shame stinging every pore, and armed with squeegee, sand, and map, I went out my front door. I drove in from the suburbs, to the older part of town. The pastels of the newer homes kind of gave way to gray and brown. I had that disembodied feeling as the car pulled up and stopped beside the wooden house that held the Christmas cup. How I got up to her door, I really couldn't tell. I watched my hand rise up and press the button of the bell. I waited, aided by my nervous rocking to and fro, and just as I was thinking I should turn around and go, I heard the rattle of the china in that hutch against the wall, the triple beat of 2 feet and a crutch came down the hall. The clicking of the door latch and the sliding of the bolt, and a little swollen struggle popped it open with a jolt. She stood there, pale and tiny, looking fragile as an egg. I forced myself from staring at that brace that held her leg. And though her thick bifocals seemed to crack and spread her eyes, their milky and refracted depths lit up with a young surprise. Come in, come in. She laughed the words, and she took me by the hand, and all my fears dissolved away, as if by her command. We went inside, and then, before I knew how to react, before my eyes and ears and nose was Christmas, past, alive, intact. The scent of candied oranges, of cinnamon and pine, the antique wooden soldiers in their military line. Oh, the porcelain nativity I always loved so much. The Dresden and the crystal I've been told I mustn't touch. My spirit fairly bolted like a child out of class. and danced among the ornaments of calico and glass. Like magic, I was 6 again, deep in a Christmas spell, steeped in the million memories the boy inside knew well. And here, among old Christmas cards, so lovingly displayed, a special place of honor for the ones we kids had made. And there, beside her rocking chair, the center of it all, my great aunt stood and said, "How nice it was that I'd come to call." Well, I sat and rattled on about the weather and the flu. She listened very patiently, and then smiled and said, "What's new?" Oh, thoughts and words began to flow. I started making sense. I lost the phony breeziness I use when I get tense. She was still passionately interested in everything I did. She was positive, encouraging, like when I was a kid. Simple generalities still sent her into fits. She demanded the specifics, the particulars, the bits. We talked about the limitations that she had had to face. She spoke with utter candor and humor and good grace. Then, defying the reality of crutch and straightened knee, on wings of hospitality, she flew to brew the tea. Oh, I sat alone with feelings that I hadn't felt in years. I looked around at Christmas through a thick, hot blur of tears. The candles and the holly she'd arranged on every shelf, the impossibly good cookies she still somehow baked herself. But these rich, tactile memories became quite pale and thin when measured by the Christmas my great aunt kept deep within. Her body halved and nearly spent, but my great aunt was whole. I saw a Christmas miracle, the triumph of a soul. The triple beat of 2 feet and a crutch came down the hall, the rattle of the china in that hutch against the wall. She poured 2 cups. She smiled, and then she handed one to me. And then we settled back and had a cup of Christmas tea. May you be encouraged too by this wonderful little poem, and be reminded that you matter, and that you matter in other people's lives. So continue to love and keep in touch and do what you can. Be the light this Christmas. And now Shelley has got a beautiful Christmas song.